This is the Hyundai IONIQ 5, an electric vehicle that will be taking us 2,000 kilometers east from Toronto, Ontario, all the way to Halifax, Nova Scotia, and back. Along the way, we'll be testing everything from charging infrastructure and range to driving dynamics and comfort, and we'll be pushing the car to the absolute limits in the harsh climate of the Canadian winter. This trip might have 1,001 challenges to throw at us over the next 3 weeks, but I guarantee it'll also be a lot of fun with tons of new experiences to make and laughs to share along the way. This is Charging East. Every successful road trip starts out with a well thought out plan, and that's what I'm doing right now. In a gas-powered car, you can get away with very little planning since gas stations are ubiquitous. They're pretty much everywhere. If your tank's starting to get a little bit low on your trip, you just stop in the nearest town and you fill her up. With an electric vehicle, things are a little bit more complicated than that. EV charging stations are popping up all over the place here in Canada, but they still aren't nearly as prevalent as gas stations yet. So you need to make sure that wherever you're going has charging stations all along the way. EVs also don't have as much range as most gas cars. The IONIQ 5 Ultimate, or Limited Trim as it's called in the US, has an EPA estimated range of 412 kilometers or 256 miles. Add in the fact that range drops off a little bit in the cold, and you've got a bit of a recipe for a headache when it comes to planning. Thankfully, there are tools that take away most of the pain. To plan my 4,000 kilometer trip, I'm using something called a Better Route Planner. It's basically Google Maps, but specifically designed for EVs. Once I enter my start and end points, it will map out the best routes with all of the charging stops along the way. The trip starts out in Toronto, the biggest city here in Canada. From there, I'll be heading up to Ottawa to pick up a friend of mine, and then we'll be pretty much making a beeline straight to Halifax, Nova Scotia. After that, we'll be turning around and driving back, hitting all of the fun touristy destinations along the way. The whole trip's about 4,000 kilometers or 2,500 miles, and we'll be doing it in the Canadian winter. This'll be fun. All right, it is 4 a.m. I am all packed up, ready to go. Let's get the show on the road. This flight marked the first time since the start of the pandemic that I traveled anywhere significant, and as eager as I was to get the trip underway, I was also extremely tired from such an early rise. Nevertheless, after a 4-hour flight from St. John's to Toronto and a quick commute across the city, I picked up the IONIQ 5 and immediately set out east. The goal for the first day of travel after my flight was to make it to Ottawa, a 4.5-hour drive where I would be picking up my friend Justin the next day. The first 100 or so kilometers of the trip took place on the highways on the outskirts of Toronto. It was about -10 Celsius outside, and I drove at the 110 kilometer speed limit for most of the way, so efficiency was bound to suffer. After about an hour, the highway ended and then the B roads took over as I drove into the more rural Ontario. The first stop of the day was inside a friendly little town called Norwood. While the car's batteries still had plenty of charge left in them, I thought it was worthwhile to just stop for a little while to take a quick break and grab something to eat. Okay, the first leg of the trip is now finished. We are here at a charging station in Norwood, Ontario, and I just took the car directly from Toronto straight to this charging station because I wanted to get out of the city. I wanted to get more comfortable with the car and that sort of thing, so I didn't set up any filming gear or anything like that. But I do have some information for you based on the efficiency and whatnot. So we went 178 kilometers and we've got 118 kilometers left. So you're looking at about 290-ish kilometers of range on the highway in -10 weather. That's the big thing. This efficiency would be much higher if it were much warmer outside, but we're in the middle of the winter and it's cold. I'm gonna plug the car in and then go eat something. I think there's a family restaurant called Jack's around here somewhere that I'm super excited to eat at because I have not eaten since like 5 o'clock this morning or something. They gave me food on the plane, but let me plug the car in and I'll get back to you. So that's what I did. I plugged the car in with a little bit of difficulty since it was my first time, and then I headed over to Jack's to order a delicious chicken sandwich. It has been a very long time since I've eaten by myself at a restaurant. I think it's probably been at least 7 or 8 years, but at least the food's good. It took just over an hour to charge up at that 50 kilowatt charger, and while that might annoy some of you, it was nice to take a bit of a break to relax and eat. Then it was time to hit the road again, heading for the next charging station. Once the roads sped up a little bit on the outside of town, I took the opportunity to try out the lane keep assists built into the car. Now, I wasn't expecting much, but I ended up actually being a little bit shocked at how well it worked. The car steered perfectly between the lines without any input whatsoever for well over a minute. And if the car hadn't, prompted me to put my hands back on the steering wheel, I'm sure it could have kept going for even longer. Eventually, the trees gave way to the town of Carleton Place, a small place on the outskirts of Ottawa where I'd be charging up next. Okay, final charge of the day is happening right now. We are in Carleton Place, just outside of Ottawa. This is just a quick top up basically because I don't want to get to Justin's and only have like 20 or 30% of my battery left and then have to immediately get up the next morning and go straight to a charger. So I'm going to top it off real quick since he doesn't have a level 2 EV station at his house, and then we'll be on our way. One thing I did want to mention while we are charging up at the 50 kilowatt charger here is that our average consumption is quite a bit lower for this trip between these two chargers. It's 20.4, whereas the last trip I believe was around 25. And the reason for that is, well, number one, the temperature did go up by 2 degrees, but that didn't make a huge difference. The biggest difference is that I drove between 85 and 95 kilometers an hour as opposed to around 110, and the average consumption went down by quite a bit. It is much more efficient at lower speeds, this IONIQ 5. After about a half an hour, the charging speed slowed to about 43 kilowatts, so I waited a little while longer and then unplugged, hitting the road one last time before staying in the city of Ottawa for the night. Good morning. It is now 7:10 a.m. and it is minus 13 outside, and as you can probably see, we've got a little bit of snow going on here right now. So I am here at Justin's. Justin's going to hop in the front seat, and we're going to drive around a little bit and get his first impressions of the car, and then we're going to pick up another one of my friends, Derek, who also lives here in Ottawa, and then we're going to head straight to our destination, which is Rivière-du-Loup. I think it's about 635 kilometers from here, so we're gonna have to stop at least twice, probably 3 times to charge up, but it should be a fun day. It's a long day, but it should be fun. Welcome to the IONIQ 5.
It's very pretty.
It is very pretty on the inside. Too bad the sunroof is completely blocked.
I mean, it is winter.
It is winter, yeah. Do you remember what Derek's address is?
82 something something?
Is it 82? I thought it was 65.
Do you know what the street's called?
No.
Okay, well, I know how to get there.
You ever been in an EV before?
No, I have not.
Where are we going, this way?
Left. No, right. I changed my mind. We're going right.
The GPS doesn't change its mind.
Yeah, well, I'm better. I adapt.
After stopping to get some Tim Hortons for breakfast and then giving Derek the grand tour of the car, we hopped on the road east, heading straight for Rivière-du-Loup. It was over 600 kilometers away, so to be safe, we picked 3 different charging stations along the route that avoided going through Montreal. It's a lovely city, but it's very prone to traffic jams, even on the outskirt highways, which you'll see in just a minute. The first charging stop of the day was in Castleman, and it was here that we hit our first minor speed bump. A Mustang Mach-E was charging up at the only usable EV charger in town, and since it was only a 50 kilowatt-hour charger, we had some time to kill. It took 45 minutes worth of Smash Bros before the Mustang left, and it was finally our turn to charge. One problem I ran into here while trying to reverse into the charging station was that all the sensors around the back of the IONIQ 5 were getting covered up with snow, and when that happens, it starts beeping like crazy because it thinks that you're going to hit something. The car also has the ability to emergency stop on its own too, so as I was reversing into the spot, the car thought I was going to hit something and then just pounded on the brakes really quickly halfway into the parking spot. Oh yeah, and the fact that this car doesn't have a rear wiper can really be a pain for reasons that should now be plainly obvious. While waiting for the IONIQ 5 to charge, we decided to head into the A&W next door for some lunch, and then we were back on the road where the weather hadn't really got any nicer. On the plus side, I did get to see how the IONIQ 5 performed in the snow, and unsurprisingly for a modern four-wheel drive SUV, it did fantastically. Despite the snowy and slushy conditions, I never felt unsafe. The car was nice and confident on the road all the way to our next destination. All right, we have arrived just outside of Montreal, and we're on a 100 kilowatt charger here now with the IONIQ 5 all plugged in and ready to go. So far we've been on only 50 kilowatt chargers, so it's going to be nice to charge up at a little bit faster. We only need a quick top up here. I think probably go to about 80-85%-ish, and then we'll head along to our next destination, which is only about 230-240 kilometers away, which is just outside of Quebec City. All right, given the fact that we've just started charging, we're only at 62 kilowatts right now, but that should ramp up fairly quickly since we're on a 100 kilowatt charger. And indeed it did. After about 10 to 15 minutes, we were getting between 88 and 90 kilowatts of power, meaning we were able to get going again in just under an hour. This time I let Justin take the wheel to try out the IONIQ 5 for the first time, and his first impressions were good. He said, and I quote, "It drives like a nice car," which is about the highest praise I think I've ever heard him give anything. Soon enough, we hit the dreaded traffic jams of Montreal. The highway was just completely backed up in one direction, but thankfully, it wasn't our direction. Eventually, we hit the exit for the Autoroute 20, which took us towards Quebec City, and the traffic sped up once again. We were enjoying ourselves for the most part, just cruising along, listening to podcasts and music, but before long, it was nighttime and we hit our next charging stop, a 350 kilowatt Petro Canada charger outside of Quebec City. There was just one problem. We weren't getting 350 kilowatts. All right, we are here at the last charging stop. This is just outside of Quebec City before we hit Rivière-du-Loup, where we're staying tonight. And we are at a Petro Canada charger, and we're supposed to be getting around 350 kilowatts. We're actually getting somewhere around 90 to 100, so it's not ramped up the full charging speed yet. We've been here for about 20-ish minutes, but it's very cold. It's like minus 11, so obviously it's going to take a while for that to ramp up. Once the batteries warm up, we should be getting 350 kilowatts, so I'll check in a sec. Unfortunately, we never did hit that magical 350 kilowatt speed. The closest we got was like 92 kilowatts after 20 to 30 minutes of charging. The universe did have a stroke of luck to send our way though. So funny story, we just finished charging at, it was about 92-ish kilowatts, so we didn't get the full 350, but a stroke of good luck, the charger actually didn't prompt us to pay. And we went inside and we told the nice lady inside about it, and she said it's okay, we'll tell our boss about it, but it's apparently the second time it's happened this day. So we just got a free charge over at Petro Canada. Slower charging or not, free is always good in my book, so we took our free electrons and we ran, making for Rivière-du-Loup and the hotel we'd be staying at for the rest of the night. I'm such a good friend that I even let Justin drive through the horrible weather for the remainder of the evening. All right, we have made it to our final destination here in Rivière-du-Loup. We're just trying to figure out some charging issues with the level 2 charger that's here. Hopefully we can get it working so that we can charge up overnight and we don't have to go to somewhere else later on. But if we don't, I mean, it's not the end of the world. The car did wonderfully in the snow, in the rain, in the sleet, in everything we had. It is now, however, a new color. It's not Atlas white anymore, it's more like a brown. So we're gonna get a good night's sleep, get up, eat some breakfast, possibly have to charge up again tomorrow morning if this charger ends up not working. But other than that, yeah, I'll see you in the morning. Later. All right, quick update here. We just finished loading up the IONIQ 5 in the morning. Unfortunately, the charger that was here at Hotel Universal just did not work overnight. So we left the car with 14% state of charge and we woke up with 14% state of charge. So maybe it was maintaining the battery a little bit because we didn't have any battery drain. So that's a plus side, but we're just gonna have to get up and go straight to a 350 kilowatt charger that's just down the road and grab something to eat. So let's hop in and get going. It was time for 350 kilowatt charging round 2, and this time at a different Petro Canada. Can you guess what happened next? So one thing I've noticed about these 350 kilowatt hour chargers on the IONIQ 5 is that it starts off at around 120 kilowatts, and then it slowly ramps down to about 60. So I'm not sure if it's a software issue or a hardware issue, but we're not getting the full 350 kilowatts ever, so that is unfortunate. According to the little bit of research that I did online, it looks like a bit of a widespread problem with Petro Canada chargers and this car. We went to an Electrify Canada charger later on in this trip and got much faster speeds, so I'm fairly certain it's not an issue on Hyundai's side of things. Petro Canada just might need to update their charging software to fix the issue, but I'm not an engineer, so I have no idea. Just speculation on my part. Day 3 was fairly uneventful overall. We crossed the border between Quebec and New Brunswick, we charged at a Petro Canada station and got the same low charging speeds, had a meal at Exit 153 that I think all three of us can agree was absolutely fantastic, and then headed into the beautiful capital city of New Brunswick called Fredericton. Okay, so we've made it to our hotel here in Fredericton. We are plugged in and charging. This charger actually works, and we're allowed to leave it there overnight. So we're good to go. It's charging at like 9.8 kilowatts. We're gonna head over to a board game cafe and just chill for the rest of the night. And that's exactly what we did. We walked around downtown Fredericton a little and took in the sights with all the historic stone buildings, and then we went straight into a little board game cafe called Unplugged. Ironic, I know, given the nature of our trip here. We played some board games, ate some food, and then we headed to bed so that we could get up early for our trip to the final destination the next morning. Or so we thought. Alright, it is now morning. We are at 100% state of charge. We just unplugged and loaded up, and we're ready to go. The day started off great. We had clear skies and snow-free roads. But as we got closer and closer to Nova Scotia, that began to change. All right, we have stopped here in Halifax, New Brunswick, which is like just outside of the Nova Scotia-New Brunswick border. We're on our way to Halifax, but we're just gonna charge up at this 50 kilowatt charger here in an Irving Big Stop. We're gonna head inside, grab some lunch, and then we'll be on our way once again. I think we arrived at just under 10% state of charge, so it's perfect. It'll probably take maybe like an hour and a half to charge to about 80%, which is what we need to get to our next stop, and then we'll be on our way. While enjoying our meal in that big stop, the winds picked up and the snow began to fall, and before long the highways were just covered in a fresh blanket of snow, and after checking the weather we decided it was best to bail out and get off the highway in Truro, about halfway to our destination in Halifax. Looks like this poor guy decided to do the same, but he went a little bit more off the highway than he intended. We posted up in a hotel there that evening, and to make the most of it, we went to see a movie that night. The weather was much more cooperative the next day, but just to be safe, we decided to hit up another Petro Canada charging station before continuing on to Halifax. This is where we hit the biggest problem yet. All right, so just a quick update. We ran into our first actual electric charger problem. This Petro Canada station, neither of the chargers are actually working. We've plugged in, we got about, I think maybe a kilowatt hour out of these chargers, and then they just completely cut off. So they ramp up to about 30 kilowatts, and then they just completely cut off. So we do, thankfully, have just enough charge to make it to our final destination. We might drive a little bit slowly to make sure we get there. It's very, very cold out here. I think with the wind chill, it's like minus 26 degrees Celsius. So it's very cold, but these chargers still should work. There's no excuse. So we're gonna head on to Halifax and hopefully we make it there. And make it there we did. After another hour of driving, we found ourselves in downtown Halifax, the city we would be staying in for the next couple of days and the final destination before turning around and heading back to where we came from. It wasn't exactly a pain-free road to get here, but it was worth it. The Halifax waterfront and the surrounding downtown atmosphere was both relaxing and refreshing after a long 2,000-kilometer trip. After charging the car at our hotel's level 2 charging station, we took it to Peggy's Cove, an iconic small town right on the east coast of Nova Scotia. It reminded me a lot of my home in Newfoundland, about 1,000 kilometers east across the ocean from where we stood.
Oh, me too.
After a local lunch in Peggy's Cove, we headed back to the city where we would spend the rest of the day exploring and eating great food until our time in the east had come to an end. Okay, as of March 4th, 2022, we have finally reached our destination here for Charging East. This is Halifax, Nova Scotia. So overall, after 2,000 kilometers with this thing, I'm very impressed with it. It's been almost virtually indistinguishable from an ICE car, which is a great thing for all of you people that are new to EVs or you haven't driven an EV before. You're gonna feel very at home. It's very quiet in here, especially with the double laminated windows and the fact that you've got no motor noise or engine noise. But other than that, it feels very much similar to a regular ICE car to drive. I mean, yes, we are getting slower charging speeds. That's to be expected. The infrastructure is not fully there yet to have 350 kilowatt chargers everywhere. So we aren't charging at optimal speeds. But other than that, I've been very impressed with this so far. I'm super happy to continue driving it, and I cannot wait to turn around and drive it the 2,000 kilometers back because we've got so much more to do. We basically just made a beeline straight here, but on the way back, Justin and I are gonna hit all the cool touristy destinations. We're gonna be hitting up, you know, Old Quebec and Quebec City, and just a bunch of other cool destinations along the way. We're gonna see the Ice Hotel, stuff like that. And I'm super excited. So get ready for part 2 of Charging East. It's gonna be a lot of fun. Hope you guys join me. See you soon.